Imagine, just for a moment, that you have access to a time machine.
Okay, I'm with you.
You step inside, the dials spin, the lights flicker, and you dial the year back, let's say roughly 66 million years. You step out onto this prehistoric jungle path.
Oh, wow. Deep past.
Deep past. The air is thick, it's humid, smells of, ozone and swamp water. The ferns are massive, just curling over your head. And the ground it's vibrating. It literally shakes with the steps of a T-Rex somewhere off in the distance.
This is already terrifying.
It is. And
Definitely.
before you left, you were given one very, very strict rule. Do not touch anything. Do not change anything.
Because in this scenario, the whole idea is that the past is just incredibly fragile, right? It's like a house of cards.
Exactly. But, humans are clumsy. You slip. Your boot slides off the designated anti-gravity path, and it just sinks into this ancient mud.
Oh,
You scramble back up. You're terrified, wiping the muck off your suit. You think, okay, I think I got away with it. No one saw. You get back in the machine, you zip back to the present day, and you step out. But something is wrong. The spelling on the street signs is a little weird, like words are spelled phonetically.
okay. Good.
The person who won the last election, someone you thought was a guaranteed loss, is now the president, and the entire political landscape is just unrecognizable. The whole world feels darker, a little meaner.
And then you look down.
You look at the bottom of your boot, and there, crushed in the mud, is a single golden butterfly.
It's the classic image. It has to be. Ray Bradbury, A Sound of Thunder, 1952. It is, I think, probably one of the most enduring tropes in all of science fiction.
It really is. I mean, we see it everywhere. You've got The Simpsons doing their parody of it. You've got the Ashton Kutcher movie, The Butterfly Effect. It's this really terrifying idea that a tiny, clumsy mistake killing a bug millions of years ago can just completely rewrite the entire script of human history.
It's a great plot device.
It's a fantastic plot device, but that's fiction. Today, what I want to know is there any truth to it? Is this just a cool story for sci-fi writers to play with? Or is there actual hard science backing up this idea that a tiny, tiny action can shatter reality?
Well, it's a question that takes us, away from time travel and directly into the heart of mathematics and meteorology, of all things.
Meteorology, weather.
Exactly. Because while Bradbury wrote the fiction, the science actually caught up about a decade later. And the answer is, well, yes, there is a reality to it. But it is far more complex and honestly far more beautiful than the movies usually get right.
So our mission for this deep dive, then, is to move past that Hollywood version. We're not just talking about stepping on bugs and, accidentally deleting the alphabet.
No, we are talking about the butterfly effect in its true scientific context, chaos theory. And I think we really need to start by clarifying what we mean by chaos, because when people hear that word, they think of, well, anarchy.
Right. A teenager's bedroom, a riot.
Or just pure randomness. But in mathematics, it describes the world we actually live in. It's a kind of order that is just.
Oh.
It's too complex for us to see easily. So we need to explore this terrified and really awe-inspiring reality that was discovered by a meteorologist in the 1960s.
Okay.
We're going to look at how the tiniest, almost invisible changes, a rounding error, a lost key, a momentary mood swing, govern everything.
Everything.
From the weather outside your window to the rhythm of your heartbeat, and yes, even to the rise and fall of empires.
I love that scope. Okay, so we're going from the microscopic all the way to the monumental. But let's start with the origin story. You said a meteorologist in the 60s. Where are we?
We have to set the scene. It is 1961. We are at MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology.
Yeah.
And to understand why what happened next was so shocking, you have to understand the scientific mindset of the time. We were living in the era of the clockwork universe.
The clockwork universe. This is the Newtonian idea, right? That the universe is basically a giant predictable machine.
Precisely. Since Sir Isaac Newton, the prevailing belief was that the universe was orderly, it was linear, it was predictable. You kick a ball with a certain force, you know exactly where it's going to land.
You kick it slightly harder, it lands slightly further away. Simple cause and effect.
Exactly. The relationship is linear. And this led to this concept called Laplace's demon.
Laplace's demon? Sounds ominous.
It was named after the French scholar Pierre-Simon Laplace. He proposed this imaginary intellect, a demon, that if it knew the precise position and momentum of every single atom in the universe at one single moment,
Every single one.
every single one, then, using Newton's laws, It could calculate the entire future and the entire past.
So the idea was that there was no such thing as, like, genuine uncertainty, only a lack of data. If we just measured better, we could predict better.
That's it. If we had a big enough computer and, enough tape measures, we could theoretically know exactly what the weather would be on this very day in the year 3000. That was the dream. It was a very, let's say, a very arrogant time for physics.
Okay, so into this very arrogant, very predictable world walks.
Edward Norton Lorenz. He was a meteorologist and a mathematician. By all accounts, a very quiet, thoughtful man. And he was working with one of those early room-sized computers, the Royal McBee LGP-30.
The LGP-30. I did look this machine up. It weighed something like 800 pounds. It ran on vacuum tubes and had a memory of about 4 kilobytes.
Oh, it was a beast. I mean, we're not talking about a smartphone here. This was a desk-sized behemoth. It was loud. It was slow. And Lorenz was using it to run a weather simulation.
Okay.
He'd programmed a set of 12 equations, very simplified, idealized weather patterns representing things like temperature, pressure, wind speed. And he wanted to see how they evolved over time. He wasn't looking for chaos. He was looking for patterns. He wanted to see if long-range weather prediction was possible.
So he's running his simulation. He's got his 12 equations. Everything is, ticking along like a clock, just as it should. What went wrong?
Well, nothing went wrong, so to speak. It was an accident. One day, he wanted to re-examine a specific sequence that he'd already run. But he didn't want to wait for the computer to start from the very beginning again.
Because these machines were incredibly slow.
Glacially slow. It would take hours to get back to the interesting part of the graph he was looking at. So he decided to take a shortcut. He decided to start the simulation from the middle.
That seems perfectly logical. If you want to watch the second half of a movie, you skip to the middle. You don't watch the opening credits again.
Exactly. So he took the printout from the previous run, he looked at the numbers for the midpoint, and he manually typed them back into the computer to let it resume from there. And then he went to get a coffee.
The most important coffee break in the history of science.
Arguably, yes. When he came back, maybe 10, 15 minutes later, he expected the graph being printed out to look exactly like the first time he ran it. I mean, it was the same code, the same equations, deterministic physics.
It had to be the same.
It had to be. But as he watched the new printout, he saw something impossible. The weather pattern. It started out following the old one, but then it began to drift. Slowly at first, and then wildly. By the end of the simulation, the two weather systems, the original and the one from the shortcut, bore absolutely no resemblance to each other. It was a completely different world. One had a massive storm system, the other had clear skies.
But how? If the physics is deterministic and he typed in the same numbers, the result has to be the same. Did a vacuum tube blow? Did a moth fly into the machine like in the Grace Hopper story?
That was his first thought. He checked the hardware, the machine was fine. The problem and the incredible discovery was in the typing.
But typing? How?
The computer's internal memory stored numbers to 6 decimal places. So a variable might be stored as, say, 0.506127.
Okay, very precise.
But the printout, just to save space on the paper, it rounded that number to 3 decimal places. So it printed 0.506.
Right. So when he typed the number back in, he didn't type 0.506127, he typed 0.506.
Precise.
Okay, let's unpack this. The difference is 0.000127. That's negligible. It's nothing.
It's 1 part in 10,000. It's less than a puff of wind. In the Clockwork Universe model, a small error like that should lead to an equally small deviation. If you nudge a planet slightly out of its orbit, it doesn't just fly off into the sun. It just changes its orbit by a tiny proportional amount.
So Lorenz assumed this tiny error would just fade away, or at least stay small. He assumed the system was stable.
Of course. That's what all of physics told him. But in his simulation, it didn't fade. It grew exponentially. It doubled, and then it doubled again and again. That tiny, insignificant error, that missing 0.0000127, it amplified itself through the feedback loops of the equations until it completely dominated the entire system.
And that was the death of the Clockwork Universe.
In that moment, Lorenz realized that unless you can measure the atmosphere with infinite precision, which is physically impossible, you can never, ever predict the weather long term.
Because there's always a rounding error. There's always a missing decimal point somewhere out there. Even if you have a thermometer on every single square inch of the planet, you can't measure the temperature to the infinite decimal.
You can't. And this is what we now officially call sensitive dependence on initial conditions.
Which is a bit of a mouthful. It doesn't exactly roll off the tongue.
No, it's not very catchy. Lorenz needed a better name. And originally, he called it the Siegel effect.
The seagull effect.
Yeah, he remarked in a paper that if his theory was correct, a seagull flapping its wings could change the weather forever.
The seagull effect doesn't have quite the same poetry to it, does it? It kind of sounds like someone stealing your French fries at the beach.
No, it doesn't. It was actually a colleague of his, a man named Philip Merrillaise, who suggested a change for a talk Lorenz was giving in 1972. The title of the talk became, "Does the flap of a butterfly's wings in Brazil set off a tornado in Texas?"
And boom, there it is. A pop culture legend is born. But before we get carried away with butterflies and tornadoes, I really want to understand the mechanics of this. How do we get from a tiny rounding error to a totally different future? Because that leap, it still feels a little bit like magic.
It feels like magic, but it's pure mathematics. And this brings us to a really important distinction. The difference between chaos theory and the butterfly effect. They aren't actually synonyms, even though we tend to use them that way.
Oh, okay. I definitely use them interchangeably.
Most people do. But think of it this way. Imagine a line of dominoes. A very, very long, winding line of dominoes that wraps around the entire world. But it's not a single line. It branches off everywhere. Every domino hits two others, which then each hit two others.
Okay, a massive branching network of dominoes.
Chaos theory describes this setup. It describes a system that is highly sensitive, where everything is connected to everything else, and where the interactions are nonlinear. That is the line of dominoes itself. The butterfly effect is simply the act of tipping the first one over.
I see. So the butterfly effect is the trigger, the small initial push, and chaos is the environment, the system that allows that tiny trigger to have a massive effect.
Yes, but here is the crucial distinction that people often miss, especially from the movies. Chaos does not mean randomness.
Okay, say more about that.
Lorenz's system was completely deterministic. If he had, by some miracle, typed in 0.506127 exactly, he would have gotten the exact same result every single time. It's not random. It follows very specific rules. If you know the input precisely, you know the output precisely.
So it's not like rolling dice where the outcome is genuinely up to chance?
No, not at all. Dice are random. Chaos is different. Chaos is about unknowability. We can't know the starting number to infinite decimal places. And because we can't know the start perfectly, we can't ever know the finish. The unpredictability comes from our own ignorance, from our measurement limits, not from the system itself.
It's an information problem, not a physics problem.
Exactly. And the most beautiful part of this is what happened when Lorenz plotted his equations, when he turned these numbers into a picture. He plotted the trajectory of his weather system over time. And instead of getting a straight line or a simple circle like a planet orbiting a star, the line looped and swirled. It created a shape.
This is the famous Lorenz attractor. Can you describe it for anyone who hasn't seen the image?
It looks almost uncannily like a butterfly. It has two wings, two distinct lobes, or loops, that are connected in the middle.
Wait, that is almost too perfect to be true. The math that describes the butterfly effect creates a shape that looks like a butterfly.
It's one of those beautiful coincidences in science. It's just incredible. Technically, this shape is called a strange attractor. It's a fractal, meaning it has infinite detail no matter how close you zoom in. And it tells us something really important.
What's that?
It implies that the weather stays within certain bounds, the overall shape of the wings. The weather on Earth will never be 200 degrees Celsius or minus 100 degrees Celsius. It is constrained. It stays within the attractor.
Okay, so it's not complete anarchy. There are rules.
There are rules, but within those wings, the line tracing the weather's path never repeats the exact same path twice. It loops around one wing for a while, then unpredictably switches to the other wing.
So to use an analogy, we know that winter is generally colder than the summer. That's the general shape of the wings. But we can't say for sure if it will snow on January 30th, 2026. That's the specific, unpredictable loop inside the wing.
That's a perfect analogy. And this leads us to the predictability horizon. Because these tiny errors double over time, there is a hard mathematical limit to how far into the future we can see. In weather forecasting, that limit is about 2 weeks.
2 weeks, that's it. Even with all our supercomputers and satellites.
Roughly. Lorenz originally estimated the doubling time of errors was about 5 days. Modern science with better data suggests we've pushed the reliable forecast out a bit, maybe to 10 days, maybe 2 weeks on a good day. But there is a wall we hit. You cannot forecast the specific weather a month from now. It's mathematically impossible. Because by that point, the small errors, the butterfly flaps, have become so large that they've completely overwhelmed the original signal of the forecast. The noise has drowned out the music.
Now, I saw in our research that there's actually a bit of a scientific debate going on about this right now. Something about whether a literal butterfly can actually cause a tornado.
Yes, this is a fascinating modern update. As recently as 2024, there's been a vigorous debate in journals like Physics Today. You have scientists like Bowen Shen arguing with Tim Palmer, and the core of the debate is this. Does the viscosity of the air, basically the thickness or friction of it, dampen out a butterfly's flap before it can grow?
So, like, is the air too thick and sticky for something that small to really start a storm? Friction would just kill the energy.
That's the argument. A butterfly flap is a very, very tiny amount of energy. In the real world, atmospheric friction might just dissipate that energy as heat almost instantly. So a literal butterfly in Brazil probably cannot cause a tornado in Texas.
So the metaphor is a bit of an exaggeration.
The metaphor is an exaggeration, but the principle is not. The principle that small, microscopic, unmeasurable changes in temperature or pressure at one point can and do scale up to affect the entire global system, that is universally accepted.
Okay, so maybe it's not a monarch butterfly, but maybe it's a slightly larger gust of wind we didn't measure, or a patch of ocean that's a fraction of a degree warmer than our satellite thought. The point stands. Small things govern big things.
They do. And this isn't just about weather. This is where it gets really, really interesting. Because this exact same math applies to human history.
Yes. This is the part I've been waiting for. We're moving from equations to what the experts call path dependency.
Path dependency. It's a bit of a jargony term, but it's a simple idea. It's a fancy way of saying history matters. It means that where we go next depends entirely on where we are right now. And where we are right now was determined by a whole sequence of often random contingent events in the past. If you change one of those early steps, you change the entire path. It's the idea that history doesn't just happen. It builds on itself one step at a time.
And the classic go-to example of this is staring us right in the face. Literally, it's right under my fingers as we speak. The keyboard.
The QWERTY keyboard. Have you ever actually looked at your keyboard and wondered, why on earth are these letters in this specific order? It makes no sense from an efficiency standpoint. The most common letters, like A, are way over there under your left pinky finger.
It's terrible. If I were designing a keyboard from scratch today for pure speed, I'd put all the vowels right under the home row fingers.
Of course. But it wasn't designed for speed. It was designed to slow you down.
To slow me down. Why would anyone do that?
Or, more accurately, it was designed to prevent the machine from jamming. Early typewriters back in the 1870s were purely mechanical. They had these little metal arms that would swing up and strike the ribbon to hit the paper.
I can picture those.
If you typed two keys that were physically next to each other on the machine too quickly, their metal arms would clash and get stuck together. You'd have to stop typing, reach into the guts of the machine, and untangle them. It was a huge pain.
So the inventor, Christopher Sholes, he deliberately scrambled the letters.
He looked for the most common letter pairs in the English language, like TH or ST, and he placed their keys far apart on the keyboard so that the corresponding metal arms would be far apart inside the machine, making them less likely to jam. The QWERTY layout was a clever mechanical patch for a specific mechanical problem.
But we don't use mechanical typewriters anymore. I'm typing on a solid piece of glass on my phone. There are no metal arms to jam.
Exactly. The mechanical problem it was designed to solve was obsolete over a century ago. But because millions of people learned to type on QWERTY, and all the typewriter and then computer manufacturing was set up for QWERTY, we got locked in.
We were stuck.
A small design choice in the 1870s, made to fix a specific mechanical glitch, now dictates how billions of people communicate every single day. That is path dependency. The butterfly was a jamming typewriter arm. The tornado is the entire global communication infrastructure.
We are trapped in the butterfly effect of a 19th century engineer. It's wild.
We are, and human history is absolutely littered with these domino moments. You have a list there from the History Snob source, right?
I do. And this is a list of moments where a tiny, seemingly insignificant event changed the world forever. Let's do a rapid fire. First up, World War I. This is maybe the ultimate example of a chaotic system just collapsing.
The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo in 1914. We all learned about this event in school. Gavrilo Princip shoots the Archduke, and boom, the world goes to war. But do you know why the assassination was even possible?
It was a wrong turn, wasn't it?
It was entirely a farce, a comedy of errors that ended in global tragedy. The assassins had actually failed earlier in the day. A group of nationalists had thrown a bomb at the Archduke's motorcade.
Right.
But they missed. The bomb bounced off the folded-back convertible cover of the Archduke's car and exploded under the car behind it, injuring some officers.
So the Archduke was safe. He completely survived the initial attempt.
He did. And he was, understandably, furious. He decided to cancel the rest of his public tour, but he insisted on one change of plan. He wanted to visit the injured officers in the hospital.
A noble
A
gesture.
noble gesture. However, in the confusion, nobody told the driver of the Archduke's car about the new plan.
A catastrophic failure of communication.
The driver follows the original, now canceled route. He makes a turn onto Franz Joseph Street. An official in the car, a general, sees the mistake and shouts at him, "Wrong way. Stop. We need to go to the hospital."
So what does the driver do?
He slams on the brakes to reverse. But this is 1914. The car has no power steering. It's a big, clunky machine. It stalls.
It stalls. And where does it stall?
It stalls directly in front of a deli where one of the failed assassins from earlier, a young man named Gavrilo Princip, was standing. He'd probably given up for the day. Maybe he was getting a sandwich. Historians debate the sandwich detail, but it just adds to the sheer absurdity of it all. But suddenly, his target, the man he failed to kill an hour ago, stops in a stalled car 5 feet away from him.
Unbelievable. The car stalls. Princip raises his pistol, shoots, and World War I begins. Empires fall. The Russian Revolution happens. The modern world is born. All because a driver missed a memo and a car had a bad gearbox.
And think of the knock-on effects, the consequences of World War I. It completely destroys the old European order. It creates the conditions for the rise of communism in Russia. It bankrupts Germany and imposes these punitive treaty terms, which sets the stage directly for World War II.
Which brings us to another terrifying butterfly moment involving a young artist in Vienna.
Adolf Hitler. Before he was a dictator, he was a drifter. A young man who desperately wanted to be a great painter. In 1907 and again in 1908, he applied to the Academy of Fine Arts, Vienna.
And he was rejected. Both times.
One rejection letter noted his unfitness for painting and that his drawings showed a lack of talent. The professor suggested he had perhaps a talent for architecture.
So why didn't he do that?
He was told to try the School of Architecture, but Hitler didn't have the high school certificate required for architecture school, so he gave up. He became bitter, living in homeless shelters, absorbing the anti-Semitic politics of the city. Now imagine, what if the admissions officer had just been in a slightly better mood that day?
Or if Hitler had just practiced drawing faces a little more.
Right. If he gets into art school, he becomes a mediocre painter in Vienna. He likely never goes into politics. No Nazi party, no Holocaust, no World War II. The entire second half of the 20th century is completely different.
It is genuinely chilling. It makes you realize how thin the line is between our reality and a totally different one. And there's another one from WWI involving Hitler, right? This one always gives me goosebumps.
Yes, the story of Henry Tandy. He was a British soldier, a highly decorated one. He won the Victoria Cross, Britain's highest award for valor. In September 1918, near the very end of the war, during a battle for the French village of Marcoing, he encountered a wounded German soldier stumbling out of the fog and the chaos.
Okay.
The German soldier was defenseless. He was limping, unable to even raise his rifle. Tandy raised his own rifle, aimed, looked the man in the eye, and he decided to spare him. He lowered his gun.
A moment of mercy.
A moment of mercy. The German soldier simply nodded his thanks and wandered off into the mist.
And that soldier was Adolf Hitler.
Allegedly, yes. Hitler himself supposedly recognized Tandy from a newspaper clipping later on, and even told this story to Neville Chamberlain in 1938. He said, "That man came so near to killing me that I thought I should never see Germany again." Now, historians debate the absolute verification of this story. Hitler was a known mythologizer, but the mere possibility is haunting.
One moment of humanity. One pull of a trigger not taken. And tens of millions of people die years later. It really twists your brain to think about the morality of that. In that moment, Tandy did the good thing.
That is the core paradox of the butterfly effect. You cannot judge an action by its ultimate outcome because the outcome is unknowable at the time of the action. Tandy was just being a decent human being. He couldn't see the hurricane he was allowing to form. He wasn't sparing a dictator. He was sparing a wounded man.
Let's look at a lighter one, but one that's still absolutely massive in its consequences. The fall of the Berlin Wall. This wasn't a war, it was a mistake. A bureaucratic screw-up.
Ah, the press conference. November 9, 1989. This is a classic example of bureaucratic incompetence accidentally changing history for the better.
The man at the center of it was Günter Schabowski. He was an East German official.
He was the spokesman for the Politburo. And, by all accounts, he was tired. He was maybe a bit rushed. Crucially, he had not been at the meeting where they discussed the new travel regulations. He was just handed a piece of paper right before he went on stage.
So he was winging it.
He was totally winging it. The new regulations were supposed to ease travel restrictions slightly, allowing people to formally apply for visas, with the new rules starting the next day. It was meant to be an orderly process.
But that's not what he said.
No. He starts reading from the note live on television. A reporter asks, when does this come into effect? Schabowski looks at his papers. He's confused. He shuffles them around. He can't see a date. So he stutters and says, as far as I know, effective immediately, without delay.
And thousands, millions of East Berliners heard that on TV. They didn't hear, go apply for a visa tomorrow. They heard, the border is open now.
Exactly. They just started walking to the wall. Thousands of them. The border guards were completely overwhelmed. They were totally outnumbered. They tried calling their superiors for orders, but no one answered because no orders had been given yet.
They had no idea what to do.
Seeing this massive, peaceful crowd and fearing either a violent riot or being forced to shoot their own people, the commander at the Bornholmer Street crossing just gave up and said, okay, open the barrier.
And the Iron Curtain just fell. Because a guy didn't read his briefing notes carefully?
It collapsed almost instantly in a wave of euphoria. If Schabowski had said, starting tomorrow morning, please visit your local police station to apply, the history of Europe might have been a slow, controlled transition rather than a sudden, joyous revolution.
It's incredible. Okay, one more. Penicillin. Arguably the biggest medical discovery of the entire 20th century.
Alexander Fleming, the discovery that revolutionized medicine and probably doubled our average life expectancy.
It happened because he went on vacation.
Well, that and because he was a bit messy. He left a stack of Petri dishes containing Staphylococcus bacteria on his lab bench, and he had left them uncovered.
And he left a window open, is that right?
Or a door. The lab was known to be drafty, and mold spores drifted in, most likely from a different lab downstairs that was working on allergies and molds, and one of those spores landed on one specific dish.
Just one.
When Fleming came back from his holiday, he was cleaning up his messy bench. He picked up this dish to throw it into a vat of Lysol to be sterilized. But he paused. He noticed something odd.
What did he see?
He saw a halo, a clear ring around the blob of mold. In that ring, the bacteria were dead. The mold was secreting some kind of juice that was killing the bacteria. That mold was penicillin none.
It was a 1 in a million shot.
It really was. So many things had to go right. If he had been a tidier scientist, he would have cleaned his dishes before he left. If the weather in London hadn't been just right for the mold to grow while he was away, if he hadn't paused for that 1 second to look at the dish before throwing it away,
We might not have antibiotics. We could still be dying of infections from a paper cut.
billions of lives saved because of a messy desk and a moment of curiosity.
I'm going to use that as an excuse next time I don't clean my office. I'm waiting for my penicillin moment.
Please do. But what all these stories show is what sociologists call reactive sequences. Event A leads to B, which leads to C. If you remove A, the entire chain just collapses. It's not that A causes C directly. It's that A makes B possible, which in turn makes C possible.
There's one more example in the notes that I found completely fascinating, the ghosted letter.
Oh, this is a truly tragic one. The year is 1919. The location is the Paris Peace Conference after World War I. The great leaders of the world, Woodrow Wilson, Lloyd George, Clemenceau, are gathering to redraw the map of the world. And a young Vietnamese man was working in the kitchens of the Ritz Hotel in Paris. He was an assistant pastry chef.
An assistant pastry chef, okay.
He saved his money. He rented a suit, which was apparently way too big for him, and he tried to deliver a letter to the American president, Woodrow Wilson.
What did the letter say?
It asked for independence for Vietnam from French colonial rule. He was inspired by Wilson's own rhetoric about national self-determination. He admired the American Declaration of Independence. He actually quoted it in his letter. He just wanted American support to free his people.
And Wilson?
Wilson's secretary likely intercepted it, or Wilson himself just ignored it. He was a busy man. The letter from an unknown pastry chef was not a priority. He never got a meeting.
And that young man was Ho Chi Minh.
Exactly. Feeling ignored and betrayed by the democratic West, he felt he had no other choice. He turned to the socialists in France, then to the Soviet Union, and he embraced communism as the only path to his country's liberation.
Wow. So if Wilson had just taken 5 minutes to meet with him? To shake his hand?
Or even just read the letter and sent a polite reply, perhaps Ho Chi Minh becomes a democratic, pro-American nationalist. Perhaps The French grant independence peacefully. Perhaps the Vietnam War never happens. The 58,000 Americans and millions of Vietnamese who died, that entire history is potentially erased.
It makes history feel so fragile, like it's all just held together by duct tape and coincidence.
That is exactly what chaos theory teaches us. We look back and we retrospectively create these grand narratives that make it all sound inevitable. We say, the war happened because of complex geopolitical tensions. And sure, the tension was there. That's the system. That's the setup of the dominoes. But the spark, the timing, the specific way it unfolded is so often pure, dumb luck.
Okay, so history is a chaotic system. Weather is a chaotic system. But what about us? What about the biology inside our own bodies? Are we just clockwork machines, or are we butterflies too?
We are walking chaos, and I mean that in the best, most beautiful way possible. For a long, long time, medicine was stuck in that same clockwork mindset as physics. Doctors thought that a healthy body was a regular body. A regular heartbeat, beating like a metronome, was seen as the ideal.
That makes intuitive sense, though. Regular means reliable. Irregular sounds sick. If my heart is skipping beats, I'm calling 911.
Of course. But it actually turns out that's wrong. A perfectly regular heart, a heart that beats with machine-like precision, with the exact same number of milliseconds between every single beat, is often a sign of pathology. It's a sign that the system is losing its complexity. It's becoming rigid. A healthy heart has variability.
Wait, so I want a chaotic heart.
You want a dynamic and complex heart. You want a heart that can adapt instantly to changing conditions. If you stand up from your chair, your heart needs to speed up immediately. If you sneeze, it changes rhythm. If you get scared, it races. A machine-like metronomic heart can't adapt.
Okay, that makes sense.
Think of a healthy heart like a murmuration of starlings. You know those huge swirling flocks of birds that swoop and turn in the sky?
Yeah, they move like one single organism. It's mesmerizing. They all turn at the same instant without crashing into each other.
Researchers at Cardiff and Swansea universities use this exact analogy in some 2025 research. A healthy heart relies on thousands of individual cells synchronizing, but not rigidly. They're flexible. They communicate constantly, adjusting to each other. If they become too rigid, or if that communication breaks down, you get disaster.
So how does the butterfly effect apply here? Where's the butterfly?
They found that many heart diseases often start with a microscopic disruption, a butterfly flap at the cellular level. Maybe a small disruption in how a single heart cell handles calcium.
Calcium, like from milk.
Calcium ions. They are the electrical trigger for heart muscle contraction. If one single cell mishandles its calcium, it can send a confusing signal to its neighbors. Now, if the system is robust and healthy, the neighbors just ignore that faulty signal. But if the system is already stressed,
The error spreads.
that tiny error propagates. The network decouples, the murmuration scatters, the birds start flying into each other. That's arrhythmia. That's ventricular fibrillation. That's a heart attack, potentially starting from a single ion channel on a single cell going wrong.
So health is this constant balancing act, right on the edge of chaos.
Yes. We used to use the word homeostasis, which implies staying the same. Now, a lot of biologists prefer the term homeodynamics. We're constantly fluctuating, constantly adapting to stay alive. And it connects directly to the brain, too. We've all heard that phrase, butterflies in your stomach.
I get them before we record every single one of these deep dives, that nervous flutter.
Well, those butterflies are real data points. We now have a much deeper understanding of the gut-brain axis. The trillions of microbes in your gut, your microbiome, are in constant communication with your brain via your vagus nerve.
The vagus nerve is like the information superhighway of the body, right? Running from the gut all the way up to the brainstem.
It is. And a small change in your microbiome, maybe you ate something unusual or you're under a lot of stress causing what's called dysbiosis, can trigger a cascade of signals. It sends these signals up the vagus nerve directly to the hypothalamus in your brain.
And suddenly I'm feeling anxious for no reason.
Or depressed. Or you're making different decisions. There's even research suggesting that certain gut bacteria can influence your level of risk-taking behavior.
That is just wild.
So imagine this chain of events. You eat a sketchy taco from a food truck. Your gut bacteria shift in a small way. This sends a subtle signal to your brain that makes you feel slightly more risk-averse for the next few hours. Because you feel risk-averse, you decide not to invest in that one stock you were thinking about, or you decide not to go over and introduce yourself to that stranger at a party.
And that stranger was your potential soulmate. The taco changed your destiny.
It's an extreme example, but yes, it's not just I am what I eat. It's my future is, in part, determined by what I eat. We are deeply integrated systems. A small input in the gut can lead to a massive output in your life's trajectory. We are all sensitive to initial conditions.
Okay, we've done history, we've done biology. This is fascinating. I want to look forward now. We live in a digital world, a world of code. And code is notoriously fragile. One missing semicolon can crash an entire program. How are we dealing with the butterfly effect in technology?
That's a great question. For a long time in tech, we tried to build fortresses. We tried to make systems that were perfect, rigid, and unbreakable. But just like a rigid heart, rigid systems fail catastrophically. If you have a static defense and one tiny thing breaks, the whole thing can just crumble.
So what's the new approach?
The new paradigm in 2025 and beyond is security chaos engineering.
Chaos engineering. That sounds like my toddler's play style, but I'm assuming it's a bit more structured than that.
Just a bit. It's the idea that you should intentionally and systematically break things in your own system in order to make them stronger. Companies like Netflix pioneered this years ago with a program they called Chaos Monkey.
Chaos Monkey, what did it do?
It was a program that would randomly shut down their own production servers.
Wait, they turned off their own servers on purpose while people were in the middle of watching movies?
Yes, to see if the larger system could survive it. The goal was to build a system that expected failure and could gracefully handle it. If one server goes down, does the movie stop streaming for the user? Or does the system automatically reroute the stream to another server without the user ever noticing? They introduce these small butterfly flaps of failure. You intentionally slow down a network connection. You corrupt a database entry. You do this to find the weaknesses before a real attacker does.
It's like a vaccine for your software. You give the system a little bit of the virus so it learns how to fight it off.
That's a perfect analogy. And in cybersecurity, this has evolved into a concept called moving target defense, or MTD.
Okay.
Think of a traditional firewall, like a castle wall. It's strong, but it's static. It just sits there. A hacker can stand outside, study the bricks, probe for weaknesses, find the loose mortar, and eventually, given enough time, break in. Time is on their side.
So how does moving target defense change that?
MTD constantly and automatically shifts the system. It changes the IP addresses every few seconds. It randomizes the memory laid out of the code. It constantly changes the configurations. It keeps shifting its shape.
So it's like trying to break into a castle that's constantly rebuilding itself.
It's a shell game. It creates a chaotic, unpredictable environment for the attacker. The hacker tries to find a foothold, but the foothold moves. The exploit they just developed no longer works because the target has changed. We are literally using chaos to defend against chaos. We're making the system unpredictable to the enemy.
And I'm guessing that artificial intelligence plays a huge role in this now.
A massive role. In fact, there was a major breakthrough reported just recently, in late 2025, from a team at Duke University. They're using AI to solve the black box problem of chaos.
What's the breakthrough?
They're using something called Koopman operator theory.
Koopman operator. Sounds like a smooth operator. Or maybe a special forces agent from a movie.
It's actually a mathematical trick that's been around since the 1930s, but it was too computationally difficult to use until we had modern AI. Here is the quick summary. Chaos is messy and nonlinear. Regular math hates nonlinear things. It's like trying to straighten a bowl of cooked spaghetti.
Impossible.
The Koopman operator is a mathematical technique that takes a chaotic system like global temperature fluctuations and maps it into a higher dimensional space where its behavior actually becomes linear.
Wait a minute. It finds the hidden order inside the chaos. It untangles the spaghetti.
In a sense, yes. It can distill thousands of messy interacting variables down to just a few simple linear equations that capture the core dynamics. This allows the AI to predict things we previously thought were unpredictable. They're using it for climate modeling, for example, identifying large-scale patterns in the chaos of the atmosphere that our previous models missed for decades.
So are we getting closer to Laplace's demon? Are we getting to a point where we actually can predict the future?
We are pushing the predictability horizon back.
Yeah.
We're seeing a little bit further into the fog, but the fog is still there. We can predict trends better. We can see the overall shape of the attractor more clearly, but the fundamental sensitivity, the butterfly flap that remains, we can't eliminate it. We can just manage its consequences better. We can maybe get a reliable weather forecast for 3 weeks out instead of 2, but we will never see infinity.
Which brings us, I think, to the part of the show where we have to make this personal. We've talked about tornadoes and computer servers and heart attacks, but what about my life? What about the daily life of the person listening to this right now?
This is the psychological butterfly effect.
I was reading this article from Mental Zone about how Small, consistent changes in your self-talk can completely transform your life over time. And it feels very, self-help. But given everything we've just discussed about chaos theory, it actually makes a lot of scientific sense.
It absolutely does. Think about your initial conditions. Every morning when you wake up, you are essentially starting a new simulation for the day. You get up, you go to the bathroom, you look in the mirror, you have a choice. You can have a critical thought, you look tired, you're a mess. Or you can have a kind thought. Okay, you're doing your best, let's go.
That one thought, that's the butterfly flap.
That is the initial condition for your entire day. That one thought changes your mood. Your mood changes your posture. Your posture changes how you interact with your family, how you greet your boss at work. That greeting changes how your boss perceives you that day. Maybe it leads to you being put on a new project, or maybe it leads to you being passed over. And 2 years down the line, that tiny thought in front of the mirror has led to a promotion or to you getting fired.
It's the sliding doors moment, but it's happening every single second of every day.
It is. But here is the very important catch. And this is where we have to come back and correct the movie The Butterfly Effect one more time.
Right. In that movie, Ashton Kutcher's character goes back, he saves the dog, or he stops the bully, and he's always thinking, if I just fix this one thing, everything else will be perfect. He treats the past like a vending machine. Put in the right coin, get out the perfect future.
And that is the fallacy of control. Chaos theory teaches us that you cannot engineer a specific outcome. You can't say, if I'm kind to myself today, I will definitely become the CEO of my company in 5 years. The system is far too complex. The web of connections is too vast.
You might be kind to yourself, which makes you more confident, which makes you realize you hate your job, which leads to you quitting and starting a bakery in Vermont. A totally different, but maybe even better outcome.
Exactly. Lorenz himself said it best. We can never know what would have happened if we didn't disturb the butterfly. If you go back and save the dog, maybe the dog grows up and bites a child who would have cured cancer. Or maybe the dog runs into traffic and causes a multi-car pileup. You simply do not know.
That's actually terrifying. It means we're all flying blind. We are constantly making these small choices that ripple out forever, and we have absolutely no idea what those ripples will ultimately do.
It is scary. And it leads us to the final and perhaps the most important philosophical question of all. If the world is deterministic, if it's all just cause and effect, dominoes falling one after the other, do we actually have free will?
Oh boy, the big one. Because if my choice to drink coffee this morning was determined by the chemical state of the atoms in my brain, which were determined by what I ate yesterday, which was determined by the farmer's harvest, was it really my choice? Or am I just another domino falling over in a line that was set in motion at the Big Bang?
Many philosophers and physicists really worry about this. If the butterfly effect is true within a deterministic system, is the future already written, just in a language that's too complex for us to ever read? This is the hard determinism view.
But you mentioned there's another way to look at it. Because I feel like I have free will. It certainly feels like I'm making choices.
Yes, this is the compatibilist view. The argument is that the system is so complex, so sensitive to initial conditions, that it effectively creates a space for free will to exist. Because the future is fundamentally unpredictable to us, because no amount of computation could ever tell us exactly what will happen next. For all practical purposes, the future is open.
So because I can't peek ahead at the last page of the book, I am, in effect, still writing it.
In a sense, yes. The unpredictability is the freedom. If the future were perfectly predictable, we would just be robots executing a program. The chaos gives us agency. And interestingly, psychological studies show that we humans need to believe this. Something like 90% of people believe the universe is indeterministic. We have this deep folk intuition that the future is not set in stone.
We need to believe that our choices matter.
And chaos theory confirms that they do matter.
Yeah.
Infinitely. And that is the beautiful dual nature of chaos.
Unpack that for us as we close out. The dual nature.
On one hand, it's humbling. It teaches you that you are not in control of the universe. You cannot dictate the future. You cannot guarantee that all your hard work will pay off in exactly the way you want it to. That's the scary part. That's the loss of the illusion of control.
But the flip side.
The flip side is incredibly empowering. Because the system is so sensitive, you don't need to be a giant to make a wave.
You don't need to be a billionaire or a president or a celebrity to change the world.
No. You just need to be a butterfly. A small act of kindness. A word of encouragement to a friend. A moment of patience with a stranger. A decision to clean up a piece of trash. These tiny inputs can amplify through the network of humanity and create massive, beautiful, unpredictable outputs on the other side of the globe or years into the future. You have infinite potential, even if you don't have absolute control.
That is a beautiful thought. It really makes you want to be a little more mindful, a little more careful with your flaps.
Ideally, yes. It suggests a kind of chaotic ethics. Act with good intentions, put positive energy into the system, because you truly never know how far it will travel or what it will become.
So where does this all leave us today? We started this deep dive with a time machine and a crushed bug, and we've ended with the power of a smile.
I think the biggest takeaway is to learn to embrace the uncertainty. We spend so much of our lives and our energy trying to predict everything: the stock market, the weather, our careers, our relationships. We try to force the beautiful, messy world into a predictable spreadsheet. But the world is a strange attractor. It loops and it swirls.
It's not a straight line.
It's not. And that's okay. The beauty of the Lorentz attractor, that butterfly shape in the math, is that while the path never repeats itself, it always stays within the wings. There is a structure to the chaos. Life goes on. The seasons change. The sun rises.
We just have to learn how to ride the wind.
Precisely. Don't fight the chaos. Learn to surf it.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave the listeners with one final thought. We've talked about 1961, we've talked about 2026, but I want to go back even further. You had a quote from Heraclitus.
Yes, the ancient Greek philosopher. He famously said, "The only constant is change. And you can never step into the same river twice."
Because the river has changed and you have changed.
Exactly. But I think the butterfly effect adds another deeper layer to that ancient wisdom. It suggests that in a deeply interconnected universe, you don't need to be a giant to make a wave. You just need to flap your wings. But remember, and this is the ultimate lesson of Edward Lorentz's Coffee Break, you can never know exactly where that wind will blow.
So flap wisely, everyone. Thanks for diving deep with us.
It's been a real pleasure.
We'll see you in the next loop of the attractor. Take care.